What are fantastic beasts? This term, probably most often associated with Rowling's book, and now also the movie, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, can be related to all sorts of mythological and legendary creatures from various cultures and traditions. In some cases, as in Rowling bestiary, this notion includes real animals that no longer exist on our planet, like a dodo bird. Following the author's suggestion, it could be assumed that fantastic beasts surround us to this day and should be admired and protected, just like the ones inhabiting the Harry Potter universe. If that would be the case, we should turn to those creatures that soon, just like dodos, will become extinct. According to the Worldwide Fund for Nature list, one of the mostly endangered species on Earth is a Sumatran tiger, perceived by locals as dangerous, even monstrous beast. In order to protect it, severe punishments for poaching and constant supervision have been developed by animal activists and the Indonesian government. That would include national parks, 2 protected areas on Sumatra Island, a 110,000-acre conservation area, a rehabilitation center, Tumbling Wildlife Nature Conservation, and governmental Batu Nanggar Sanctuary, where Sumatran tigers might feel relatively safe. Sumatra became a sanctuary, not only for tigers, but also rhinos, orangutans, and elephants, mythical animals of our world. What I would like to believe is that Antiquity is not just an inspiration for many authors and artists, but also the way of thinking or rethinking the reality that surrounds us. That would be the case of J.K. Rowling, who studied classics as well as Roman philology. Both of these educational experiences find their presence in texts that belong to the Harry Potter world. What I would like to achieve in my presentation is to show how Antiquity and later literary traditions resonate with texts written or co-written by Rowling. The main motive that I want to analyze is the one of a space inhabited by creatures that might be inspired by Greek and Roman mythology. By comparing Rowling's and classic concepts of animal protection, I would like to show how we can link them to the current situation of the endangered animals. In classical Antiquity, various animals served as pets, food, entertainment, but foremost, they were an indispensable medium of communication with the immortal gods. But as far as mythology goes, it must be stressed that the assumption in many cultures that animals once possessed the earth plays no part in Greek's creation story. That, however, does not apply to monsters that appear quite early in the Theogony by Hesiod. At first, they were tucked out of sight in Tartarus, along with the 3-headed dog, Kerberos. We are told that they were chained to in the cruel bonds out of jealousy for their strength, which resonates with the general view of the ancient Greeks. Fear and hostility are prominent feelings projected onto animals. Animals have the power to make men feel guilty. Then, however, we read, Zeus resorts to unleashing the monsters, and they become his chief allies. The monsters originally can be seen as wild species. Having said this, the interpretation of mythical monsters being cultural figures of real-life animals seems to be justified. In the Harry Potter world, we meet all sorts of such creatures: centaurs, merpeople, unicorns, but also dragons, giants, and even Cerberus himself. The grounds of Hogwarts function partly as a nature reserve for magical creatures which have difficulty existing in the Muggle-inhabited areas. There are several specific locations that have been inhabited by the fantastic beasts. First to be analyzed is the Forbidden Forest. As we read on Pottermore, an internet platform gathering all news by Rowling and Warner Bros., this space is a large, dark forest on the grounds of Hogwarts, where many weird, wonderful, and highly dangerous creatures live. That would be, among many others, Acromantula, hippogriffs, unicorns, thestrals, werewolves, and rogue Fort Anglia, an enchanted car that has rebelled and escaped from its owner. it is absolutely forbidden for students to visit the forest, as it is dutifully reminded each year by the headmaster of Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore. According to our knowledge, no one hunts in the woods, at least no humans. This dangerous and mysterious place might be interpreted in many ways. For me, the Forbidden Forest is a dark, maybe even obscure, but still safe space for those creatures who are excluded from the wizarding society. Space that is only hostile to humans, but also absolutely friendly to all misunderstood beasts. In the first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, along with the main character, we enter the Forbidden Forest for the first time. There, Harry meets Firenze, one of the centaurs living in the woods, inspired not only by the classical mythology, but also by Dante's Divine Comedy. Just like in the epic poem, Firenze is a guide for the main character, tells him that everyone is lying to him, and explains what's really going on in Hogwarts. He also reveals that the creature that Harry just saw, that has been feeding on the blood of innocent unicorns, is actually Lord Voldemort. For Harry, just as for the poet in Divine Comedy, it is a turning point in the story. The link to the epic poem of the 14th century, inspired by Virgil's Aeneid, might also suggest the connection between the Forbidden Forest and the mythological underworld ruled by Hades. In the Odyssey, the realm of Hades is described in greater detail. It was located at the end of the earth, on the far shore of the earth-encircling river Okeanos, beyond the gates of the sun and the land of dreams. A very interesting matter emerges when we put the attention on the etymology of the Greek domos haidou. Domos haidou is usually translated into English as house of Hades. The adjective haidou, however, also means unseen or invisible, and domos is simply a dwelling place, domain, or realm. The dark realm of classical mythology might be the Forbidden Forest of the Harry Potter world. Both spaces are associated with death and danger, although they are not necessarily evil or cursed. They are just not homes for living men. Both of them are also inhabited and guarded by the mythical creatures, which do not belong to the so-called civilized world. The strong connection between these two locations strengthens the presence of dark figures, Hades in the underworld and Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, who at this point is on the verge of death. As for the former, the underworld is his rightful place, whereas the latter is an intruder. Both figures awe anyone who encounters them. Ancient people also feared to say the name of Hades, just like Voldemort, you know who, is a forbidden word. It appears grotesque to imagine Hades as a mythical zoo full of peculiar animals. First and foremost, zoos should be entertaining, while here we are dealing with quite an opposite case. The same goes with the Forbidden Forest, which is supposed to serve as a sanctuary for endangered species. However, the question remains, what does the adjective forbidden mean? Does it forbid beasts to harm humans? Or maybe, on the contrary, does it stop humans from harming beasts? To describe next location, we need to go back to Pottermore. Here we read, the lake is full of creatures that would make a muggle naturally swoon with delight if terror did not seize them first. The Great Lake is not only the living space for all the water creatures. In the fourth book, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, it becomes the underwater arena of the second competition of the Triwizard Tournament, a dangerous school contest resembling the Olympics. Contestants have to find a way to spend 1 hour underwater in order to save someone that is important for them. Harry, following his friend Neville's advice, eats mysterious plant called gillywick, which evokes the growth of gills on his neck and fins on his hand and feet. Thanks to this, the young wizard is able to reach the bottom of the lake and complete the task. There he sees the underwater kingdom, ruled and inhabited by merpeople, creatures resembling mythical mermaids. Even though the Great Lake is mostly associated with the Scottish mysterious waters, with legendary creatures living there, some traces of classical antiquity can still be found in its depths. Firstly, it might be claimed that magical waters of Hogwarts can be related to mythical kingdom of Poseidon. As god of the Mediterranean Sea, he was closely associated with fish and other marine creatures. His chariot was drawn by a pair of fish-tailed horses, and his palace was in the depth of the sea. As places, the Great Lake and Mediterranean Sea might be only vaguely comparable, but there are other motifs that connect these two spaces. In the underwater kingdom of Poseidon, Theseus had to prove that he was his son after Minos had thrown a ring into the water and challenged him to find it. The test of proving one's champion status also applies to Harry Potter, who had to bring back what is most important for him, his best friend Ron. The boy who lived, as it was stated before, had to swallow the plant that allowed him to be underwater for an hour. This motif refers to the myth of Glaucus, who, just like Harry, had to eat a strange herb to get underwater. The connection between these two stories gets even stronger when we stress that the plant eaten by Potter can be found in magical Mediterranean water plant and their properties, read by Neville. Merpeople and Grindylows, as well as the giant squid of Rowling's creation, have a tendency to pull students underwater when they come too close to the surface, just like numerous water nymphs and monsters. Many obstacles that both mythical and magical characters meet on their way to explore wonders of the dangerous waters prove that the underwater kingdom is an exclusive space in which only those who really sort of fit there might feel safe. Humans, muggles, or wizards do not belong there, and they are to be considered the dangerous intruders of the water sanctuaries. The phenomenon of the animal protection is even more visible if we take into account the description of merpeople in Rowling's bestiary, which states that those creatures, just like centaurs, were excluded from the wizarding society as not compatible with the standards of the civilized world. Just like the Forbidden Forest, the Great Lake is dangerous and hostile to humans, but a perfect world for all the creatures that live in it. This concept contradicts with the one on which various oceanariums are built upon. Magical water beasts are not supposed to be seen, just like in Antiquity, as their kingdom is absolutely independent and separated from the human's world. Antiquity, of course, was not the only inspiration that came to Rowling's mind when she was creating magical sanctuaries for mythical beasts. The concept of animal protection evolved in the short book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, that Rowling published under the name of the fictional character from the Harry Potter universe, Magizoologist Newt Scamander. The form of the book, entries about fantastic beasts in the alphabetic order, with illustrations and a short introduction, refers to the tradition of medieval bestiaries. The act of gathering all the mysterious creatures in the order to describe them and classify them makes one think that this might be an attempt to control the uncontrollable and incomprehensible beasts to, in a way, rule them. Getting to know their habits and main traits gives a wizard a certain power over them, even if the one claims he or she is a friend of the representatives of the magical fauna. The concept of the magical bestiary was elaborated in the film version of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Here we witness the story of Newt Scamander before he published his work. Young wizard travels to New York with a suitcase full of magical creatures in order to release some of them in their natural habitat. The suitcase is of course enchanted, and it contains a whole sanctuary for all sorts of beasts, with varied environments, weather zones, plants, etc. This concept is similar to the one developed in the Renaissance, the Cabinet of Curiosities. Just like European travelers collected wonders from all over the world in order to keep them in private collections, so does the Scamander. However, the idea behind it, explored by the director of the movie, David Yates, and Rowling, as screenwriter, is quite different. Collecting magical animals serves as a way to protect them and, if possible, to release them, which clearly corresponds to the idea of contemporary sanctuaries, not zoos, for wild animals. The tendency to banish monsters to the underworld, imprison them, so to speak, in the lower regions of man's mind, indicates both a fascination and an avoidance of the frightening and unknown, writes Stephen Lonsdale. A monster figure does not necessarily have to be an animal. It can be a woman, a child, LGBTQ people, the ones with disabilities, people of color, so almost everyone who in one way or another is marginalized in a particular society. As in the Harry Potter universe, in ancient Greece, according to Lonsdale, man's relationship with animals is neither simply one of superiority or submission. As Grosh points out, Rowling seemed to support this view, as she clearly critiques the wizarding world's hierarchy, which places witches and wizards in a superior position above other magical creatures. On the other hand, in Antiquity, the relative lack of animals in the creation story is in keeping with the Greek anthropocentric worldview, and so in Harry Potter. Grosh writes that wizards have achieved a position of complete superiority over other magical creatures. Spaces where Rowling placed various mythical beasts are similar to ones appearing in Greek mythology. She connects the past with the present by commenting and, at least partly, supporting ancient Greeks' views on mythical beasts. At the same time, she comments on the current situation of animals and how should the human-animal relationship look like. Although her visions seem to be the most popular, there are other cases of such an approach in the works of children's and young adult literature, to mention Brandon Small's Fablehaven or Lucy Scott's Beasts of Olympus. In both, mythical creatures are kept in isolation, even if they are not a threat to humans. However, some of Rowling's ideas do not correspond to these views at all. For example, taking dragons used in the first Triwizard Tournament, a task from the Sanctuary, does not seem to be very pro-ecological. Nevertheless, the analyzed spaces presented in both mythology and Harry Potter series resemble those created by various pro-animal organizations, just like the ones on Sumatra. It might be claimed that Rowling's views on animals, or at least some of them, based on classical antiquities tradition, might complete the postulate of Newt Scamander, which is to think that generations of young witches and wizards have grown to a fuller knowledge and understanding of the fantastic beasts, as they are currently surrounded by millions of the most vicious creatures on the planet, humans. Thank you.